Thank you for the introduction. And as you told before, we are going to see some developing techniques for distributed teams. What you will find here maybe is something you already know, but I think you can also find something more interesting. I will do this speech from the perspective of CTO of a company that moved from a physical location company to a remote company. So something for me was quite, maybe I will just say, oh, this is wow. And you will say, hey, I know this since 10 years, maybe, I don't know. But as I told you before, maybe we'll find something interesting. Before we go, just a small suggestion about hopping. Just double click your screen if you cannot see my presentation at full size. I usually use very big fonts, but if you want, you can double click and zoom. A brief introduction about me. Alex already told something about me, but yeah, what I can add. Yeah, I'm CTO at Mage Specialist. I'm Magento Master for 2019 and 2020. Let's see what happened in the next year. Well, actually, I just hope. And I'm a Magento contributor. I'm mainly a backend developer. I'm a proud father of Julia since 2019. That was the most amazing part of my life, actually. So where are we going to start? From one shocking sentence. Chapter number 1, we are becoming microservices. I will try to explain what I mean exactly. So as I told you before, my history is related to a company that was a physical location company. So we were working in a single place. So this was the typical, well, actually my typical company before 2020. So people were moving into a single place to work together. It was cool. Well, actually, it was even funny. You had real-time communication. You could knock the shoulder of your colleague and ask, "Hey, can you help me in this tasks? In this task, can I help you in this other?" It was funny. You had very short-time communication. It was fast. It was funny. So, well, actually, we were working like what is called in the developing environment a kind of spaghetti monolith. So basically, we were we had a kind of interconnection that was at the end very messy because everyone was connecting to everyone else in a fast way without effort. So everyone was connecting wherever. So what happened? I think you know what happened in 2020, probably. I don't know if you heard something in the news, you saw something in the newspaper. I don't know, but if you noticed that we have COVID. So no, I think you know. So it was quite unexpected. So we started since a day to another to work remotely. So basically, yeah, we started working remotely. So we couldn't anymore knock to the shoulder of our colleague to ask something, to have short-time communication. But at the very beginning, let's say it was very cool because you could be home, and the most amazing part actually was that you could wear pajama. Come on, we know perfectly that this picture probably, you did at least one time in your life. Yeah, I know perfectly. At least I did. Well, today, no, I'm wearing correctly, as you can see. I don't know if you can see my webcam, but I don't have pajama, but sometimes it happens. You could whatever you like. Well, actually, no, this was not exactly remote working. This was a remote vacation. But yeah, this was just a joke. So what happened actually? Communication changed. So we started communicating through the network. It was the only way we had. And the main problem with this approach is that most of the time it became asynchronous. I mean, you have a kind of asynchronous communication with other people because maybe you send a message, even if you're using a direct messaging system like, for example, Slack is, or Telegram, or even WhatsApp, or whatever you like to use. But sometimes the people were answering you minutes or maybe hours after. So the short term and the fast communication were different. And this, I think this helped a little bit the developers to become more independent. I mean, I don't know if you had the same experience, but in example, most of the people were just asking another colleague and wait for the answer. Of course, with an asynchronous communication, you cannot do it anymore. You have to work with your task, and you are much more independent. And of course, you have a much more flexible schedule, and you handle your task independently. So you have developer 1, 2, 3, like in this picture, working in different times. But of course, if you have this approach, your main problem is the connection between tasks. I mean, sometimes you have depending tasks. I mean, you must finish a task before you can start another one. This is the main problem that can lead actually to a productivity degradation at the very beginning. But at the end, your work is becoming, when you put the pieces together, is becoming eventually consistent. I mean, at the very end, you have everything in place, you have all the tasks done, and you can put the place together. So what happened actually in the COVID time? We work from different places, we are network connected, we work independent tasks, we work asynchronously, we have an independent schedule, our job is eventually consistent. So we are becoming microservices. That is the reality. And if we are becoming microservices in our company, we have to change our coding strategies accordingly. So actually, we have to change. If you, of course, I say again, if you were not already a remote company, you have to change your mind. You have to change your coding approach as well if you want to face this situation. And if you want to get the best from this situation, actually. Because I think that most of the people actually understood that it was an opportunity and they could get the best from it. So what I want to see in the speech are a couple of examples actually on how to work in what I call isolated development and how to avoid the task dependency to become a problem. I want to make an example. Let's imagine we have a front-end feature that, of course, as usually happen, it requires a backend information. So let's imagine you have some kind of front-end feature that is getting information from your database, for example. So you need one backend guy to do something and one front-end guy to do something else. So what was the typical example before? You had a kind of pipeline in which you, this is a bad example. Let's call it a bad example. Actually, it's not bad, it's not optimal example. You first do the backend task, then you wait until the backend task is finished. Then the front end, using the backend work, can go ahead. Then you go through the QA and customer approval. It is not bad 100%. I mean, at the end, you have your job done. But as you noticed, basically, you must wait every single step to be done before. So basically, your Gantt is something like this. So you finish the backend, you start the front end, you finish the front end, you start the QA. Can we optimize this? I mean, if we have this approach, basically, we are, I think, decreasing our productivity. Well, actually, to be honest, this approach it's also good for a no remote company. But of course, if you're a remote company, I think it's the only way to handle the situation. How can you fix this task dependency issue with an API-first approach on mocks? This is just an example. Of course, this is not the only way you can address this problem, but it is the first one we found, probably one of the most effective. What you have to do is to remove this dependency. So basically, front-end team must be independent from the backend team. Yeah, it sounds quite strange. So you say, how can I develop a front-end task that is depending from the backend? They depends by definition. So how can I avoid this? Well, actually, the answer is quite simple. You can create a mock feature in the backend so the front-end can go ahead. Okay, it seems to be quite simple. Actually, it is not. I want to show you how we address this problem. We do in this way. So we start from defining the API before. So you probably heard a lot of times about API-first approach. API-first approach, from my perspective, is one of the best practice you can use in a modern development. So basically, you define your features, then you create a kind of mock backend in this specific example, and then you create the front end. So basically, when you have a kind of fake engine of the backend providing information, so the front end team can go ahead. When you are done, you're going to replace your mock backend with real backend. It seems to be simple, but of course we'll see how it works, especially using the Magento tools. And oh yes, this is of course the same. And your Gantt becomes something like this. So the only blocking task actually is API definition. But once you define API, you can create a mock, you can start the backend, the real backend work, you can start the front end, and so on. So basically, you can use much more parallel working. And if you're if you're dealing with different teams, with different people, with of course, what you need is something that can go in parallel, because we already know that every project manager loves parallel working, even when you cannot apply it. So what happened? We develop an API interface first. When I say API, please, I didn't say before, but when I say API, I don't mean web API. I mean interface in general. It can be, of course, even REST API, GraphQL, or whatever you like. But in general, I mean an interface. Then you mock your output or input, depending on your perspective, and teams can develop in parallel. Our teams are independent, and our job, again, is eventually consistent. So again, we are microservices. But now we work in the right way. But how can we achieve this from the code perspective? In the next slide, I will show you how to deal with Magento modules to achieve this in the best way. Because of course, this seems to be quite simple when I explain how to deal with this kind of stuff. But when you face the reality with the code, with a versioning system, whatever, you need a specific tool to do this. Otherwise, you will have a lot of people overlapping each other, and your productivity, again, will fall down. So chapter number 2, isolated development in the Magento world. The keywords, as we saw before, are mocks and interfaces. So before we told that basically we have to have a real backend, one API or interfaces again, and a front end. And this is the final state of our task. So we start from backwards, as we said before. So we first create API. How we can do in Magento? Usually, you should create a module named my module. If your feature is my module, you create my module API. That only contains interface. I already spoke about this approach in my last speeches, even last year at MageCONF when I was in presence. But I want to underline it again, especially in remote working. So before coding, think on what you need and what is your final feature. And this is very important. And you have to do at the very beginning of a project. Because you know what's happened when you, I don't know if you ever heard about the developer energy theorem and why you should be defining your features at the very beginning. I will explain to you something that you probably know, but you probably don't want to actually, someone never told you. So let's imagine we have this scheme. So we have developer energy and time of the project. So at the very beginning, when a developer has a new project, everything is cool. So, oh, cool, I have a new project. It will be plenty of cool features. Of course, we all know that developers likes everything that is new. But yeah, you know, after some time on the same project, on the same task, nah, actually, I don't think this feature is important anymore. I will remove it. No one will notice. No one will care. Yeah, come on, we know perfectly you did at least once in your life. Then you go ahead and, yeah, I need a vacation. This is your energy level. Then at the very end, it's, I hate my job. I want to die. My mom was right. I should have become a doctor. We know perfectly this happens always. This is why it's important to define your features at the very beginning, because you're full of energy. If you do at the end, probably you will, I don't know, probably make a kind of mock of your feature. So define your feature at the very beginning of your project when you still do not hate your project. So define your API at the very beginning. So at least you have your vision at the very beginning. So it's very important to create API at the beginning. So come back. Once we created my module API containing all interfaces, we can create my module mock. This is actually the notation we are using. So my module with a mock suffix. This my module mock basically implements all the features, but in a mock way. So basically, just send some data that's a simple mock. So it's something that must be very easy and super fast to do. Please note that, of course, my module mock should depending from my module API and not the opposite. This is known, for example, in the solid principles as dependency inversion principle. So the feature must be depending on the interface and not the opposite, of course. Otherwise, you will have to deal with messy dependencies in your code. Then, once you create your API and your mock module, you create tests for your API module. So you see how it is working from the outside of your feature. And once you write the test, you replace your mock module and you replace with the real module implementation. As soon as you do this and you start doing this, just remember to run continuously your integration tests so you can verify your compliance. Why all this work? It's quite simple, because as soon as you create the My Module API and the My Module mock, basically you decouple the front-end team and the front-end modules, because the front-end, or well, actually, to be honest, it's not only the front-end, but whatever else is an external, is outside your module, should be relying only on your API layer. So basically, your external module must not care on how it works in the backend. Just need to interface the API. So the front-end team now is independent. So while you're working on the real module implementation, they can go ahead and work with the front-end implementation. And you should be doing this for every kind of dependency if you want to parallelize your work. So basically, if you have other depending modules, should be following the same approach. And if you do this, of course, if you have a small task, I think this is an extra effort. But if you have complex tasks, can be very helpful. So does this extra effort worth the shorter delivery time? It's a very hard question to answer because it depends on the tasks. Because much bigger the task is, more help you will find here. But in general, it leads you to a better quality. So yes, it works in general because you have mocks, you have tests, you can approach with TDD, you can have a scalable team. This is very important. You have a scalable architecture, you have a better maintainability, and it leads to better task management. So in general, it's good. And we saw what are my suggestions on how to deal with remote working, with good approach to remote working. But I want even to show you some super cool gadgets for remote working. So I don't know if you probably were used to, and probably you are used to, but for me, I was a kind of pair programming holic. So I was dependent from pair programming because from my perspective, it's one of the best approach for training on the job and to, for example, train one junior guy is one of the best approach. And what I found in the last days, actually the last week, so it's a quite new feature for me, is PHP Storm plus Code With Me plugin. I don't know if you ever used it. It's something very cool and very new in the very last version of PHP Storm. There should be 20.2.3 or something like that. I don't remember exactly. And it is super cool. Actually, it changed my life in the last week. So basically, you find this new, you have to install the plugin in PHP Storm, and you will find, it is free, of course, and you will find this new Code With Me widget in your toolbar, and you can enable access. And basically, when you do this, you have a kind of invitation link you can send to someone else. And when these or those other people come and click to the link you provided, they will download a kind of IntelliJ. Of course, it is PHP Storm. I grabbed the picture from the official website, so you know it is Java, but of course you have the same in PHP Storm. So basically, you download a kind of light client, and you basically can do pair programming. So you have a kind of shared session, like what's happened in the Google Docs when you type from to PC. So basically, it happens the same in your PHP Storm. You can even, for example, share your terminal. You can run remote actions. So it's super cool if you want to do pair programming. And for example, you can even, if you want to show, for example, your newly created module to someone else, you can even force other user to follow you. So you change one tab and automatically their PHP Storm will follow you. So you can explain, for example, in audio only without screen sharing and explaining what is happening. You can change your code in real time. It's super cool. And you can find some more information here. It is Code With Me on PHP Storm. I just remember you. It is the very last version. The previous version were not compatible with this plugin. So just make sure you upgrade it. Another cool tool for making very good presentations, because now presentation is the new way of communication, is OBS Studio. It works with Linux, it works with Mac OS as well as Windows. So basically, it's a very cool open source project. Even this tool is free, in which you can compose your screen. It is a software for live streaming. Basically, you can compose your presentation. For example, let's say you want to explain how a feature works or whatever. So as you can see in this example, I have my PHP Storm in the background, and I shared the browser from another window, and I put on the top of my PHP Storm. So maybe I can show what is changing when I do something, and you can program it. And of course, you can even add your, oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, this is my ugly face. So I'm sorry, I was not prepared to see my ugly face. But yeah, so basically you can even show your webcam. Maybe with you it will be better. Yeah, probably, yeah. I seem like a crazy man. Oh yeah, I'm a crazy man. Okay, that's why. So OBS Studio, and this is OBS project, and it's free. But the cool stuff with OBS Studio, for example, comes with the virtual webcam plugin. So basically, if you install OBS Studio and virtual webcam plugin, you can use the output of OBS Studio to stream with another software. So for example, you can stream to your Zoom conference, for example. So you can compose like you have a kind of TV studio in which you can compose your screen with different pieces of information. You can do transition and whatever. And you can do live and stream like it was a webcam. So in my screen, in this slide, you can see I'm using OBS Studio, and I'm streaming in my Zoom, for example, software. But you can, because we are using Zoom, but of course you can do the same with Skype or whatever you like. It can be Meet or whatever. So it's super cool. I think I'm finished. So now it's time for Q&A. So speak now or forever hold your peace.
Thank you, Riccardo, for the amazing presentation. By the way, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Please don't hesitate to ask your questions in the chat. So now we have like 8 minutes for the Q&A session, so we can have conversations around this topic, around remote development and how to make it productive. So the first question is, when was the first time you tried the Code With Me plugin?
Last week. So it's quite new. As I told before, it's very new plugin. One of my colleagues, Giacomo Mirabassi, told me about that, and we started trying. Actually, we still have to do an official presentation in our company. So I started using one-to-one with some people asking my support for solving some problems or fixing some feature. So it's very new. So to be honest, sometimes it is also not exactly stable. It's a kind of EAP. So, but it's super cool. And the funny stuff is that you know, when you share your screen, you can do the same with Zoom sharing your screen. But sometimes, you know, depending on your line, you can see the blurry screen. So it's something annoying. With this, you can go, you have directly in your PHP storm showing your screen. So it's very cool.
Cool. Sounds like a great feature to try. So another question is, so is it right that you do have two modules for each feature? One is API and second is basically implementation?
Not exactly. I have much more than two modules, to be honest.
Yeah.
Well, a simplified version. But yes, if I need to answering your question, yes, we usually have one API module for each feature and one, let's call it engine module for each feature. But as you saw in my presentation, we also have sometimes mock modules, or we also have a front-end UI module because we decouple front-end and even an admin UI module and so on. And everything, and every time you need to connect dependency, you basically create a connection module. So one feature can be up to, I don't know, maybe 10, even 12 modules. It depends. Of course, it depends on the complexity and on the architecture you want to follow. And you can find this approach in Magento in several places. One of the most famous now is the Magento inventory. That was probably, it is one of the most famous.
Cool.
Yeah.
Actually,
takes extra time. It is not a question, but it's a
statement. But the question is, from your experience, like, what is more time consuming, the dependency of each next stage on the previous one, or this extra mile of work that you have to do to create API?
You know, it depends on the task. It depends on the task. But answering to the question that is a statement, yes, it is, of course. It requires a huge extra time, but it leads to a better maintainable code. So it depends on you. You can do it in several ways. You know, in computer science, you don't have one single way and one right way and one bad way to do something. You have a less complex and more complex way to do something. Sometimes complexity helps maintainability, of course. But it depends. It depends on you. It depends on the project budget. It depends on your company. It depends on your approach. It depends on whatever. But the short answer is yes, it takes time. You will see the advantages maybe in the future of the project, not immediately. You're welcome.
Great. Yeah, thank you. So I want to say thank you, Riccardo, for this amazing presentation and time to share your knowledge during the Q&A. Also, thank you, our audience, for your time today and for great questions. So if you have any of your questions unanswered, you can find Riccardo in Community Engineering Slack or in Twitter, or for example, in chat rooms where you can like ask your questions, and probably someone else will jump in and have conversation with you around that.
Okay, that's great. Just to answer the last time question, is very quick. Do you keep your, because it's very interesting, do you keep the mocks as a sort of documentation? Yes and not. Yes, they are, but the documentation of your code should be represented by tests, not the mocks. So the mocks can be an example, but the real documentation should be in tests from my perspective. So the test should be documenting your feature.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Yeah, no, you are the star here. So if you want to rewatch this presentation, or you just joined in the middle of it, you will find it later on YouTube, so you can enjoy it once again. And now you have like 7 minutes for the break before the next session. So yeah, take your time and see you soon. Bye-bye.